Well, I wanted to give you some tips and show you how I get my garden started off each spring and how I prepare the garden for the fall planting. And it's a minimal amount of work. I don't do tilling, I don't do turning over of the soil, which I will explain in just a minute. But before we do that, let me show you what my garden's looking like right now. If you watch my video, how to plant potatoes from the seed potatoes you have in your kitchen, this video shows how I planted these potatoes, and it's been 60 days. I planted them on March 7th, and kind of do the math there, this is the end of April, so maybe not quite 60 days, but they're up about 15 inches in most places. And I haven't done anything to these potatoes except water. Don't fertilize them, because I did have compost in the pots when I started off, which does a really great job. Compost is, in my opinion, your garden's best friend. Now these potatoes will go on a few more weeks until I get a bloom on them. At that point, I'll do a reveal and see what I've got down under the ground. That'll be a future video that I do. And along about that same time, 57, 58 days ago, I put out some onion sets in the same bed that I had onions in last year. There was 3 or 4 onions left over from last year, and right now they're getting ready to bolt or to put off a seed pod here. Now I don't have a lot of experience with this, but I think once they do bolt, the onion itself will no longer continue to grow and it starts to lose its strength. So that's probably a good time to go ahead and get it up and get it into the kitchen. So these onions here are doing really well. I'm going to use some of these this summer and try to raise a few of them into bigger onions for next spring. The green beans are doing fantastic. This is the Burpees Stringless green beans here. They're at about 54 days right now. There's beautiful blooms on these. And there's some very small bean pods starting to come out. So I'm really expecting a great harvest off of these. Get a broader look there. I've got 4 or 5 rows in there. I do plant these a little bit closer than what's recommended, but the soil is nourished again with a good covering of compost, which I think really helps. Moving on and talking about getting your garden ready for the initial planting, we'll use this little portion of my garden here as an example. This hasn't been planted in 2 years. It has been raked. There was grasses and some vines and stuff, and I've raked that down. There's still a pretty good covering of weeds in there. But what I'll do with this is I'll cover it with cardboard for 2 to 4 months to kill off that growth. And it'll look something like this right here. It's not a pretty sight to look at. It's one way that you can recycle some of your Amazon boxes. I really should have pulled off the tape and all the labels, because that's not going to compost, but I'll end up picking that up and raking that out of the garden later on. What this does is it keeps the soil underneath isolated from sun, so it restricts growth, and it helps it maintain moisture underneath. So that's a great environment for earthworms to grow and for the microorganisms to start to form. That's going to help to develop your soil. It's really cost efficient. All it costs you is time to do this, to put it down. This bed was done with the cardboard method, but to expedite it, I put compost down on the ground, covered it with the cardboard for about 6 or 8 weeks. That was long enough to kill off most of the weed growth that was underneath, kept the soil moist. in the garden. It still gets watered about 3 times a week with the irrigation system. But this is really a jump start here. If you do this method of a cardboard for a short period of time, say 6 weeks, on top of your compost, that's going to be a much quicker process to get into planting. Now, we uncovered this last week, put down more of those Burpees stringless beans about 4 days ago, maybe 5 days ago. And you can see the beans are really coming up nicely. Now, there may be a couple of weeds that do make it up to the surface. Just go ahead and pull those up, try to get the roots out. And this is going to be a fantastic bed. I'll probably will use this bed in the fall for potatoes. The tomatoes were started from plants about 6 weeks ago, in the neighborhood of 45 days or whatnot, and they're blooming very well. They're up to about 5 feet in height. Most of these are Roma. There's a couple of different species in here. Have a few lemons or limes. I'm not sure what these are, but they're one or the other. And then a lot of blooms over here for more of the same. Well, I appreciate you watching. Don't forget to check back in about 5 or 6 weeks. That'll be sometime in late May. We'll pull some potatoes up and see what we've got there, and we'll give you an update on everything else at that point. So until then, thanks for watching. I hope your garden turns out great. Click that like, subscribe, and share with your friends. See you next time.